Joining me now, just back from that trip to the Middle East, is Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who has a lot on his plate. It's so good to have you here.
Jake, good morning.
Good to see you. So let's just talk about Moody's downgrading America's AAA credit, citing out-of-control debt, citing growing interest payments on that debt. How concerned are you that this is going to drive interest rates in the U.S. even higher and maybe even drive investment in the U.S. away?
Well, Jake, first of all, the history of rating agencies, by the time they get to a downgrade, everything's already in the market. Larry Summers and I don't agree on everything, but in 2011, the last time, or 2 times ago when he had a downgrade, he poo-pooed it. What I think is important is that President Trump has just come back from this historic Mideast trip, and there's trillions of dollars coming into the U.S. So we are seeing confidence from investors. So I don't put much credence in the Moody's.
Let's turn to trade, because that's obviously where there's been a lot of focus. President Trump just put 150 countries on notice that their tariffs are about to go higher in the next few weeks if they don't reach a trade deal with the U.S. How exactly will you decide what those new tariff rates will be? Will they be what was previously announced on April 2nd, so-called Liberation Day? And when will they actually go into effect?
So, Jake, we have a 90-day pause. There are 18 important trading partners, probably another 20 strong relationships. President Trump has put them on notice that if you do not negotiate in good faith, that you will ratchet back up to your April 2nd level.
So the 90-day pause isn't just China, it's everybody?
No, the 90-day pause was put on about a week after April 2nd.
Oh, that first 90-day pause.
The first 90-day pause.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that with a few exceptions, the countries are coming with very good proposals for us. And I look at these proposals, and they want to lower their tariffs, they want to lower their non-tariff barriers. Some of them have been manipulating their currency, they've been subsidizing industry and labor. And I look at these proposals, and I think these are excellent proposals, but I wonder, how did we get here? How did the previous administrations allow this to happen to the American people?
So 150 countries have been put on notice. How many deals do you think you're going to be able to announce, and how quickly?
Again, it will depend on whether they're negotiating in good faith. And there are a lot of smaller trading relationships that we can just come up with a number. My other sense is that we will do a lot of regional deals. This is the rate for Central America. This is the rate for this part of Africa. But what we are focused on right now are the 18 important trading relationships.
Walmart announced this week it's going to have to raise prices on some goods, and they blame Trump's tariffs, particularly the tariffs on China. Here's the CEO. Take a listen.
We will do our best to keep our prices as low as possible. But given the magnitude of the tariffs, even at the reduced levels announced this week, we aren't able to absorb all the pressure given the reality of narrow retail margins. We're positioned to manage the cost pressure from tariffs as well or better than anyone. But even at the reduced levels, the higher tariffs will result in higher prices.
So President Trump went on Truth Social and says Walmart should eat the tariffs. In other words, not pass on the prices to consumers. Doesn't that inherently serve as an acknowledgement that tariffs are essentially a tax on consumers? Because initially President Trump said, well, other countries, that's not true. Countries pay for the tariffs. But here we have a perfect example. China gets these tariffs, and then Walmart has to raise its prices, and consumers end up paying for them.
Well, Jake, in essence, what you're saying is you're saying taxes are inflationary, so let's pass the Trump tax cuts, and that'll be disinflationary if we continue that line of thinking.
I don't know that you can put me on as endorsing anything, but go ahead.
Let's just keep everything consistent. I did speak to Doug McMillon, who I have a very good relationship, yesterday, just to understand what he had to say. And understand that came from an earnings call. On an earnings call, because of SEC requirements, they have to give the most draconian case. So Walmart will be absorbing some of the tariffs. Some may get passed on to consumers. But the other thing that's happening is that inflation is down. We had the first drop in inflation in 4 years under President Trump. The other thing that Doug mentioned to me is for his consumers, for his buyers, the most important thing are gasoline prices, and this administration has gotten gasoline prices down. Service prices are down. So overall, I would expect inflation to remain in line. But I don't blame consumers for being skittish after what happened to them 4 years under Biden. We had the worst inflation in 40 years.
So ever since Liberation Day, April 2nd, I have a weekday show called The Lead. And ever since then, every day pretty much, we interview a small business owner. Some of them are Trump supporters, some of them are not, some of them are tariff supporters, some of them are not. The one thing I hear from almost every one of them is the uncertainty. They don't know how to plan for the future because they have no idea what's going to come. The other thing I hear is that their margins, these are small business, their margins are so thin, 5 to 10% max. And they say that these tariffs are just taking away all of their profit margin. So I guess my question is, what do you say to people concerned about the uncertainty? And what do you say to people who say, small business owners who say, we need relief? Because they say, like, I'd love to buy lithium batteries in the United States, but you can't. They're only available for small businesses from China.
Well, a couple of things to unpack there, Jake. One is that we didn't get here overnight in terms of this terrible trade situation we have with China, but also with the rest of the world. And President Trump is renegotiating these, and strategic uncertainty is a negotiating tactic. So if we were to give too much certainty to the other countries, then they would play us into negotiations. I am confident that at the ends of these negotiations, both the retailers, the American people, and the American workers will be better off. That what we saw with China was the only country post-April 2nd to escalate. So both sides escalated. We got to an untenable level. We were at 145%. They were at 125%. And we had a meeting in Geneva last weekend, and both sides came down 115%. So the U.S. is now at 30%. A 10% reciprocal tariff that's on a pause, and 20% fentanyl tariffs. Those were put on back in February, so those are already in the system. So I think most of the small businesses you're talking to, they were probably they're referring to the very high triple-digit tariff levels, which have now been brought down.
Yes, some of them were, but there's also just this idea, a lot of them saying, look, I support what President Trump wants to do. I support the idea of wanting to bring manufacturing back to the United States, but it can't be done in a month or 3 months or even a year, that there's just an entire infrastructure in this country that is lacking. They can't buy what they would love to buy. Most of them, as you know, if not all of them, are patriotic. They want to buy American goods, but a lot of this stuff just isn't made in America. I mean, we could go into a long history about the hollowing out of the manufacturing base that is neither the fault of you, me, or President Trump, but it does exist, and it will take years to make the manufacturing infrastructure that these small businesses rely on.
Well, Jake, I think what we're going to see, just like we saw with the UK trade deal, my sense is it's what we'll see with China. We don't want to decouple with China, and President Trump actually wants to open up China for business. So the manufacturing we want to bring back, we had during COVID, we realized that we had some very strategic shortfalls, whether it was medicines, semiconductors, steel, the other products. So the long-term, the medium-term goal is to bring back these strategic industries as quickly as possible. And I think we will continue trading with China in the kinds of products that these small businesses are talking about at lower tariff levels.
Before you go, you joined President Trump on his Mideast trip, and he's been defending from criticism from both liberals and conservatives to accept this $400 million luxury jet as a gift from Qatar to use for the duration of his presidency. And then, I believe, for his presidential library. Trump says he's giving it to him as a nice gesture. You're a hard-nosed businessman. Even if Qatar isn't asking for anything in return now for the jet, I mean, that's a bill that could come due. Nobody in the Middle East gives things just to, or anywhere in the world, just gives a $400 million jet just to be nice.
Well, I don't know, Jake. The French gave us the Statue of Liberty. The British gave us the Resolute desk. I'm not sure they asked for anything in advance. And the more important airplane deal was there's $100 billion of orders from Qatari Airlines to Boeing. Kelly Ortberg, the CEO of Boeing, was with us in the Middle East. This is the biggest order in the company's history. So, I think that plane deal is much more important than this other one.
Well, I will just say about the Statue of Liberty, I mean, that was authorized by Congress, and it belongs to the American people. It doesn't belong to whoever was president at the time.
Well, I think that this plane would be a gift to the American government.
All right. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, it's great to have you here. Thank you so much for being here, and welcome back. You probably need to go get some rest. It's Sunday. Does anybody in your position rest?